Rain hammered against the cracked window of Sarah's tiny apartment as she sat at her kitchen table surrounded by overdue bills, anatomy textbooks, and half-empty coffee cups. The radiator barely worked. Her student uniform still smelled faintly of antiseptic from the hospital ward where she had finished a 12-hour shift only an hour earlier. Her phone buzzed. At first, she ignored it. Debt collectors had been calling for weeks. But when the screen lit up again, the name froze her completely. Mia Lauron. Sarah had not heard from her in almost 8 months. Back then, Mia had been reckless, charming, and permanently broke. The two girls had survived university together by splitting groceries and laughing through disasters neither of them could afford. Then Mia vanished almost overnight. No explanations. No goodbye. Now her Instagram showed designer dresses, luxury resorts, diamond bracelets, and private beaches. Sarah answered cautiously, "Mia." A burst of laughter came through the speaker. "You sound like you've seen a ghost. Where the hell have you been?" "In Dubai mostly," Mia said casually. "Listen, I need to see you." That night, Mia arrived outside Sarah's apartment in a black Mercedes with tinted windows. Sarah nearly failed to recognize her. Her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, and a gold necklace rested against a silk blouse that probably cost more than Sarah's monthly rent. But beneath the glamour, something felt wrong. Mia hugged her too tightly. Inside the apartment, Mia glanced around the cramped room and quietly said, "You're still living like this." Sarah folded her arms. "Some of us don't disappear and become millionaires." Mia smiled weakly. "I met someone." Over the next hour, Mia spoke obsessively about a wealthy sheikh named Khalid. She described him as generous, brilliant, and deeply protective. According to her, he owned properties across the Middle East and funded private business ventures for women he trusted. Sarah listened carefully, trying to ignore how rehearsed Mia sounded. "You've known him for less than a year," Sarah said. "And he's suddenly offering us jobs." "It's not jobs," Mia corrected softly. "It's opportunity." Sarah noticed Mia touching her phone constantly, almost nervously, waiting for messages that never stopped arriving. "Does he control all this?" Sarah asked. "The clothes? The car?" Mia's expression briefly darkened. "You don't understand him." The words hung heavily in the room. Later that evening, Mia showed Sarah photographs from the mansion in Dubai. Marble hallways, indoor waterfalls, gold chandeliers, armed security guards standing in the background of nearly every picture. Sarah pointed at one image. "Why are there guards everywhere?" "He's important," Mia replied immediately. "But why invite me?" Mia hesitated for the first time all night. "He said I needed someone loyal beside me." Sarah laughed nervously. "That sounds insane." Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe desperation. Or maybe it was the terrifying reality that Sarah only had £80 left in her bank account. Tuition payments were overdue. Her landlord had threatened eviction twice already. Mia leaned closer. "Come with me for 1 week," she whispered. "If you hate it, you leave. Khalid can change your life." By morning, Sarah had agreed. 2 days later, they stood inside a private airport terminal surrounded by silent staff dressed in black uniforms. No other passengers spoke. No airline logos appeared anywhere inside the building. As they boarded the sleek white jet, Sarah noticed 2 large men watching them near the runway. Something twisted in her stomach. Inside the cabin, Mia suddenly grabbed her hand with cold, trembling fingers. "He said once we arrive," she whispered, staring out the window into the darkness, "our lives will never be the same." Hours later, the plane descended over an endless desert illuminated only by moonlight. Sarah looked through the window and felt her heartbeat slow. Below them, black SUVs waited beside a private runway. Armed guards stood motionless in the sand under the freezing wind. The SUVs moved silently across the desert highway, their headlights slicing through endless darkness. Sarah sat beside Mia in the back seat, watching dunes roll past the tinted windows like black ocean waves. Neither of the armed drivers spoke. The only sound inside the vehicle was the low hum of the engine and Mia nervously tapping her fingernails against her thigh. After nearly an hour, Massive iron gates emerged from the darkness. The mansion behind them looked less like a home and more like a fortress. High stone walls surrounded the estate. Security cameras rotated slowly above every entrance, their red recording lights glowing in the night. As the gates opened, Sarah noticed more guards standing along the driveway with rifles hanging across their chests. "This is incredible," Mia whispered breathlessly. Sarah did not answer. The SUVs stopped beneath a towering entrance lined with marble pillars. Before the women could even grab their bags, several staff members approached them with lowered eyes and stiff movements, avoiding direct eye contact completely. Then another woman appeared. She wore an elegant black dress and carried herself with cold precision. Her face revealed no emotion. "I am Nadira," she said calmly. "Welcome to the residence of Sheikh Khalid." Her accent was smooth and controlled. Every word sounded rehearsed. Mia smiled immediately. "It's wonderful to finally be here." Nadira's expression never changed. "Your phones and passports." Sarah frowned. "Why?" "For privacy and security." The guard stepped closer. Mia quickly handed over her belongings without hesitation. Sarah reluctantly followed after noticing the rifles behind them. Nadira placed the items into a locked silver case before motioning toward the entrance. "You will receive everything back when your stay concludes." Inside, the mansion felt unnaturally silent. The ceilings stretched high above crystal chandeliers, while polished marble floors reflected the dim golden lighting. Expensive paintings covered the walls, yet the atmosphere felt cold and empty, as though nobody truly lived there. As they walked deeper inside, Sarah began noticing disturbing details. Several hallway doors were locked with electronic keypads. Security cameras watched every corridor. A maid hurried past carrying towels stained faintly red. Another worker scrubbed something dark from the marble floor near a staircase before quickly covering it with a rug when Sarah looked too closely. "What happened there?" Sarah quietly asked. The maid froze briefly but kept walking without answering. Mia rolled her eyes. "You're being paranoid already. Aren't you seeing this?" "Rich people are weird," Mia whispered. "Stop overthinking everything." Nadira escorted them to an enormous bedroom overlooking the desert. Designer clothes had already been arranged across the beds. Jewelry boxes sat open beside bottles of perfume and expensive makeup products. Mia laughed with disbelief. "Sarah, this is insane." But Sarah noticed something else. The bedroom windows could not be opened. Hours later, after dinner was delivered by silent staff members, Mia fell asleep almost instantly. Sarah remained awake, unable to shake the feeling that something inside the mansion was deeply wrong. Near midnight, she heard voices outside the bedroom door. Carefully, she stepped into the hallway. Two guards stood near the staircase speaking in low voices. "The new deliveries arrived early," one muttered. "What about the girl downstairs?" Still refusing cooperation. The second guard laughed quietly. "She won't refuse after tomorrow." Sarah felt ice crawl through her chest. Before she could move, a muffled crying sound echoed somewhere nearby. She followed it carefully down a dim corridor lined with locked doors. The crying grew louder until she stopped outside one bedroom with a partially open door. Inside, a young blonde woman sat trembling on the floor beside the bed. Her mascara had run down her face, and bruises covered one side of her neck. When the woman saw Sarah, panic flooded her expression. "You need to leave," she whispered desperately. Sarah stepped closer. "Who are you?" The woman grabbed her wrist with shaking hands. "Escape before he chooses you." Footsteps suddenly echoed somewhere behind the hallway walls, followed by the metallic sound of locks shifting electronically. The terrified woman immediately released Sarah's wrist and backed into the corner of the room, covering her mouth to stop herself screaming. Sarah heard footsteps approaching through darkness outside. Sarah barely made it back to her bedroom before the footsteps reached the corridor. Her pulse hammered violently as she slipped beneath the blankets beside Mia, pretending to sleep. Seconds later, the bedroom door slowly opened. Soft footsteps crossed the room. Sarah kept her breathing steady while someone lingered near the beds. Then the door quietly shut again. Morning arrived with suffocating heat pouring through the sealed windows. Mia acted as if nothing strange had happened, excitedly trying on expensive dresses left for them overnight. Sarah said little, her mind trapped on the terrified girl hidden inside the locked room. At breakfast, Nadira calmly informed them the Sheikh was occupied with business matters but hoped to meet them soon. Everything inside the dining hall felt staged. Beautiful women sat silently around the enormous table, eating almost nothing. Guards stood beside every exit. Nobody used phones. Nobody laughed naturally. Even the music drifting through the speakers sounded carefully controlled. Sarah noticed the blonde girl from the night before sitting alone near the far end of the table. A bruise darkened her cheekbone. The moment Nadira left the room, Sarah quietly approached her. "My name is Sarah," she whispered. The girl hesitated before answering. "Elena. You said we need to escape." Elena's eyes instantly filled with fear. "Keep your voice down." Sarah sat beside her anyway. Over the next several minutes, Elena revealed fragments of horrifying truth between nervous glances toward the guards. She had arrived from Romania 3 months earlier after meeting a wealthy man online who promised modeling contracts and financial security. Instead, her passport had been taken immediately. "They target lonely women," Elena whispered shakily. "Women with debt. Women with secrets. Women nobody would notice disappearing." Sarah felt sick. "Elena, what is this place?" The girl swallowed hard. "Some women are sold to powerful clients. Some are blackmailed after they're recorded. Others," her voice cracked, "others disappear completely." Sarah stared at her in disbelief. "And the Sheikh?" Elena looked toward the security cameras before answering. "He enjoys control. Fear excites him." Suddenly, loud alarms exploded throughout the mansion. Every woman in the dining hall jumped violently. Guards stormed through the corridors shouting orders in Arabic. One of them grabbed Elena aggressively and forced her toward the courtyard outside. Sarah and Mia were shoved along with the others into the blazing desert sunlight. "What's happening?" Mia cried. Nobody answered. In the center of the courtyard, a man knelt on the marble ground with blood covering his face. His wrists were zip-tied behind his back. Sarah recognized him vaguely as one of the drivers from the airport. He looked barely alive. More guards surrounded the courtyard balconies above them while terrified women stood shoulder to shoulder below. Nadira appeared beside the fountain, perfectly calm as always. "This man betrayed Sheikh Khalid," she announced coldly. "He attempted unauthorized contact with outsiders." The kneeling man began sobbing. "Please," he begged. "Please, I have children." A gunshot cracked through the courtyard. The man collapsed instantly. Mia screamed. Blood spread across the white marble beneath the body while several women burst into tears around them. Yet the guards remained emotionless. One casually dragged the corpse away as workers immediately began washing the floor clean. Sarah could barely breathe. This was not intimidation. It was theater. The execution had been staged deliberately for them. Mia grabbed Sarah's arm so tightly her nails dug into skin. "We need to leave," she whispered frantically. But Sarah already understood the truth. Nobody left this mansion unless they were allowed to. That night, Mia completely unraveled emotionally. She paced the bedroom shaking uncontrollably, muttering prayers beneath her breath while refusing to eat. Every sound from the hallway made her flinch violently. "He killed him like it was nothing," Mia whispered. "Oh God, oh God." Sarah tried calming her, but fear had infected everything now. Even the luxurious bedroom felt like a prison cell disguised with silk curtains and perfume. Eventually Mia fell asleep from exhaustion. Unable to rest, Sarah searched the room for anything useful. Hidden inside one of the drawers, she found a second phone Mia had apparently concealed from security during their arrival. Sarah froze. The screen lit up instantly. Dozens of encrypted messages filled the display. Most were from a contact saved simply as K. Sarah's stomach tightened as she opened the conversation history. The messages stretched back almost 7 months. Photos, flight details, financial transfers. And then one message made her blood run cold. "Kay, your friend fits perfectly. Is she desperate enough to trust you?" "Mia, Yes. She has nobody else. Sarah stared at the screen in horror. Another message followed weeks later. K. Bring her willingly. Fear works better when they arrive smiling. Footsteps suddenly echoed outside the bedroom door. Sarah looked toward the sleeping Mia, her hands trembling around the phone as the doorknob slowly began turning. Sarah quickly locked Mia's hidden phone and shoved it back inside the drawer moments before the bedroom door opened. Nadira entered silently. Dress formally, she said. Sheikh Khalid will join dinner tonight. Then she left without another word. Sarah stood frozen beside the bed while Mia slowly woke up, rubbing her swollen eyes. For several seconds Sarah simply stared at her friend, unable to separate the frightened girl beside her from the messages hidden inside that phone. Had Mia betrayed her willingly? Or had fear twisted her into something else? You okay? Mia asked weakly. Sarah forced herself to nod. Just tired. Hours later, the women were escorted into a massive dining hall glowing beneath golden chandeliers. A string quartet played softly in the corner while servants moved silently between tables carrying silver trays and crystal glasses. Everything looked beautiful. Everything felt wrong. Sarah noticed how every woman sat perfectly upright, carefully monitoring their words and expressions. Nobody spoke freely. Even laughter sounded rehearsed, like actors terrified of forgetting their lines. Then the room suddenly fell silent. Sheikh Khalid entered without security or announcement. He looked younger than Sarah expected. Clean-shaven. Perfectly dressed. Calm. His presence alone changed the atmosphere instantly, like oxygen disappearing from the room. He smiled warmly. Please, he said gently. Eat. His voice carried no anger, no cruelty. That frightened Sarah more than shouting would have. Khalid moved slowly through the room greeting guests by name, asking personal questions, remembering details about their families and lives. When he finally reached Sarah and Mia, his dark eyes settled directly on Sarah. Mia speaks very highly of you, he said. Sarah forced a polite smile. Thank you for inviting me. You were difficult to convince. The comment hit her harder than it should have. Beside her, Mia looked almost mesmerized by him. Khalid sat across from them during dinner, speaking with calm intelligence about business, travel, and human nature. Yet beneath every sentence Sarah sensed something calculated. People misunderstand loyalty, he said softly while cutting his food. They think loyalty is love. It is not. Loyalty is obedience under pressure. Nobody at the table responded. Khalid smiled faintly. The world punishes weak people. I simply reward honesty. His gaze shifted briefly toward one trembling woman seated farther down the table. She immediately lowered her eyes. Sarah suddenly understood the performance happening around her. These women were not guests pretending to be prisoners. They were prisoners pretending to be guests. Later in the evening, Khalid asked Mia about her financial problems back in London. Mia hesitated before admitting her debts had nearly destroyed her career. Without emotion, Khalid turned toward Nadira. Clear everything, he said. Mia stared at him in disbelief. What? You should never struggle again, Khalid replied calmly. The people under my protection become untouchable. Sarah watched Mia emotionally collapse into gratitude almost instantly. Fear, admiration, dependence, all blending together inside her expression. Khalid noticed Sarah studying him. You disapprove of me, he observed quietly. I barely know you. But you are trying very hard to understand me. His smile widened slightly. The problem with intelligent people, Sarah, is they mistake suspicion for wisdom. For the rest of dinner, Khalid subtly turned conversations against one another. He revealed private secrets casually, exposing which women had spoken badly about others. Within minutes paranoia spread across the table. Nervous glances replaced conversation. Trust dissolved almost visibly. And Khalid enjoyed every second of it. Hours later, unable to sleep, Sarah slipped from her bedroom alone. The mansion remained eerily quiet at night. Following a service corridor behind the kitchen, she eventually discovered a dark hallway secured by electronic doors. One had been left slightly open. Inside, Cold air hummed through hidden servers and surveillance equipment. Sarah stepped carefully into the room. Then her blood turned to ice. Hundreds of passports filled metal shelves along the walls. Beside them were photographs of missing women from different countries. Surveillance monitors displayed hidden camera footage from bedrooms throughout the mansion. One screen showed a woman being violently beaten by masked guards. Another showed someone tied to a chair screaming. Sarah backed away in horror. Then she heard footsteps behind her. Slow. Deliberate. Getting closer in the darkness. Sarah spun around in panic as the footsteps approached the surveillance room. For one horrifying second, she expected to see Sheikh Khalid standing in the doorway. Instead, an elderly housekeeper appeared carrying folded towels. Her frightened eyes widened when she saw Sarah inside the forbidden hallway. "You should not be here," the woman whispered urgently. Sarah hurried past her without answering and disappeared back through the corridors before guards could notice anything. By the time she reached her bedroom, her entire body trembled violently. Mia sat awake on the bed. "Where were you?" "Walking." Mia narrowed her eyes suspiciously. "You need to stop snooping around, Sarah." The coldness in her voice felt unfamiliar. Sarah stared at her carefully. "How long have you really known Khalid?" Mia's expression instantly hardened. "Why are you asking that?" "I found messages on your hidden phone." Silence filled the room. For a moment Mia looked genuinely terrified. Then anger replaced it just as quickly. "You went through my things. You lied to me." "No," Mia snapped. "I protected you." Sarah laughed bitterly. "Protected me? You brought me into this place." Mia stood up suddenly. "You don't understand how powerful he is." "That's exactly what scares me." For the first time since arriving, the friendship between them truly cracked apart. Mia no longer sounded like someone trapped inside the mansion. She sounded like someone defending it. The next morning, Sarah secretly found Elena cleaning dishes alongside kitchen staff. Guards monitored the room constantly, forcing them to speak carefully. "I found surveillance rooms," Sarah whispered while drying plates beside her. "Passports. Videos." Elena's face lost color. "You saw too much already." "What is under this mansion?" Elena hesitated nervously before leaning closer. "There are rumors," she whispered. "Women who disappear are buried somewhere beneath the estate grounds." Sarah felt sick. "Buried where?" "No one knows exactly. But staff say construction crews arrive at night near the pool area." Before Sarah could ask more questions, Nadira entered the kitchen. Everyone immediately fell silent. That evening, the mansion transformed into something surreal. Luxury cars arrived through the front gates carrying wealthy guests from different countries. Music echoed across the estate while fountains glowed blue beneath desert lights. Women wore expensive dresses and diamonds like decorations inside a cage. Sarah noticed how heavily the alcohol flowed among the guards. Khalid moved through the party charming investors, politicians, and glamorous influencers with terrifying ease. Nobody would ever suspect what existed behind the mansion walls. Mia remained close beside him almost the entire night. At one point Sarah overheard her laughing softly while Khalid whispered something into her ear. The intimacy between them made Sarah feel physically ill. Later, while wandering near the outdoor bar, Sarah spotted one of the guards stumbling away drunk toward a restricted maintenance corridor near the pool. She followed carefully from a distance. The guard muttered curses under his breath while unlocking a heavy metal door hidden behind storage equipment. Before it fully closed again, Sarah slipped inside unnoticed. A narrow staircase descended underground beneath the pool. The air smelled damp and chemical-heavy. Water pipes rattled through the concrete walls overhead while dim maintenance lights flickered weakly above her. Sarah moved deeper below the mansion until she reached a massive underground chamber. Then she froze. Fresh concrete sections covered large portions of the floor. Not construction. Graves. Several areas had clearly been dug up recently. Dirty shovels leaned against the wall beside bags of cement. A terrible odor lingered beneath the chlorine smell drifting from the pool above. Sarah covered her mouth, backing away in horror. Then she heard something. A weak sound. Coughing. She followed it toward one cracked section of concrete near the corner of the chamber. Kneeling down, she noticed fingers moving weakly beneath broken rubble. Oh my God! Using a loose metal pipe nearby, Sarah smashed at the damaged concrete desperately until part of the hole collapsed inward. A woman lay trapped underneath. Her face was bruised beyond recognition. Blood covered her hair. One arm bent unnaturally beneath collapsed debris, but her eyes were still barely open. Sarah dropped beside her immediately. "Stay awake," she whispered frantically. "I'll get help." The woman weakly grabbed Sarah's wrist with trembling fingers. Tears rolled down her face as she struggled to speak. "They execute everyone," she whispered painfully. Her breathing shook violently. "Everyone who tries to leave." Above them, somewhere beyond the underground ceiling, music from the party continued playing while footsteps echoed near the staircase leading down into darkness. Footsteps echoed above the underground chamber as Sarah desperately tried pulling rubble away from the injured woman. The victim cried out weakly in pain. "I can't leave you here," Sarah whispered. But voices were already approaching the staircase. Panicked, Sarah squeezed the woman's hand before retreating back into the shadows moments before two guards entered the chamber carrying flashlights. She hid silently behind thick maintenance pipes while they inspected the damaged concrete. One of them cursed angrily. "She's still alive." The second guard shrugged. "Not for long." Sarah pressed trembling hands against her mouth as the men dragged the barely conscious woman deeper into the darkness beyond the chamber. Her weak cries slowly disappeared underground. When the guards finally left, Sarah escaped back upstairs feeling as though the mansion itself had begun swallowing her alive. Over the following days, Sheikh Khalid tightened his control over everyone inside the estate. Nobody was ever alone anymore. Guards followed conversations. Cameras watched every hallway. Even meals became silent psychological tests where guests nervously monitored one another's reactions before speaking. Fear spread through the mansion like poison. And Mia was changing. At first it happened subtly. She began repeating Khalid's phrases about loyalty and trust. Then she started questioning Sarah constantly. "Why are you always looking around?" Mia asked one afternoon while they sat beside the indoor fountain. "Because people are dying here." Mia lowered her voice sharply. "You need to stop saying things like that." Sarah stared at her. "You know it's true." "No," Mia snapped. "You're paranoid." But Sarah saw fear hiding beneath her anger. Later that evening, Sarah witnessed Mia standing beside Nadira near the dining hall entrance, quietly pointing toward two women across the room. Minutes afterward, guards escorted the terrified women away. They never returned. The realization shattered something inside Sarah. Mia was helping them now. That night, Nadira unexpectedly escorted Sarah alone to Khalid's private study. The room smelled of expensive cigars and polished leather. Massive bookshelves lined the walls while soft classical music played quietly in the background. Khalid stood near the window overlooking the desert. He smiled calmly as Sarah entered. "You look exhausted." Sarah remained silent. Khalid poured tea into two delicate cups. "Fear is consuming this house," he said softly. "People become irrational when they are afraid. You execute people. I punish betrayal." His voice remained perfectly gentle. Khalid motioned for her to sit. "Mia worries about you constantly." Sarah almost laughed. "Mia brought me here. She saved you." The statement caught her off guard. Khalid stepped closer slowly. "Do you know how desperate your situation was in London? Debt. Isolation. No family support. You were collapsing long before arriving here." Sarah felt anger rising inside her. "What do you want from me?" "Loyalty." He said it so calmly that it sounded reasonable. Khalid explained that many women inside the mansion eventually earned freedom, wealth, and protection by cooperating fully. Those who resisted created unnecessary suffering for themselves. "You are intelligent, Sarah," he continued quietly. "I would rather reward you than destroy you." For one terrifying moment, part of her understood how he manipulated people so effectively. Khalid never raised his voice. Never lost control. He studied emotional wounds carefully, then offered comfort exactly where people were weakest. Love became leverage. Fear became obedience. By the time Sarah returned to her bedroom, she felt emotionally suffocated. Every hallway seemed narrower now. Every smiling servant looked terrified beneath the surface. Mia sat silently on the edge of her bed waiting for her. For several long seconds neither of them spoke. Then Mia suddenly crossed the room and shoved something cold into Sarah's hand. A small bronze key. Mia's eyes filled with tears. "You need to escape tonight," she whispered shakily. Sarah stared at her in confusion. Mia glanced fearfully toward the security camera above the bedroom door before speaking again. "Before he executes us both." Guards dragged Sarah through the mansion corridors while servants avoided looking directly at her. Blood from the cut near her forehead dripped onto the marble floors as terrified guests silently stepped aside. Nobody spoke. Nobody intervened. The performance inside the mansion was over now. Sarah was thrown into a cold underground room lined with surveillance monitors and metal chairs bolted to the floor. Cameras covered every corner of the ceiling. Some screens displayed live footage from bedrooms throughout the estate. Others showed recordings of women crying, begging, confessing. The room smelled of sweat, fear, and stale cigarette smoke. A guard cuffed Sarah's wrists to the chair before leaving without a word. Hours passed. Maybe longer. The lights never changed, making time impossible to track. Occasionally recordings would begin playing automatically across the monitors surrounding her. Women confessing theft. Women admitting prostitution. Women claiming they traveled willingly. Some were clearly drugged. Others looked terrified beyond comprehension. Sarah slowly realized the recordings existed for one purpose: control. If victims escaped, the organization could destroy their credibility instantly using manipulated footage and forced confessions. Eventually the door opened again. Sheikh Khalid entered alone. He looked perfectly calm, as though discussing ordinary business matters instead of human lives. Mia followed several steps behind him, unable to meet Sarah's eyes. Khalid sat across from her. "You disappointed me," he said quietly. Sarah laughed bitterly despite the fear crushing her chest. "You murder people. I create order." His voice remained disturbingly gentle. Khalid motioned toward the surrounding monitors. "Most people break themselves long before I ever touch them. Fear simply reveals who they already are." Sarah turned toward Mia. "Why?" Mia's breathing became uneven. Khalid answered for her. "Because she needed us." He calmly explained how Mia's influencer career had collapsed months earlier after intimate videos were stolen from her phone. The organization contacted her before the leaks became public. They offered protection, money, silence. In exchange, Mia would help identify emotionally vulnerable women online. "She was very useful," Khalid said softly. Sarah felt physically sick. Mia finally looked at her, tears spilling down her face. "I didn't want this. You chose me." "At first I thought it was just escort work," Mia whispered desperately. "Luxury trips. Rich clients. Nobody told me people would disappear. But you stayed. They owned me by then." Khalid watched the conversation like a scientist studying an experiment. Mia collapsed into the chair opposite Sarah. "They threatened to release everything. They said my family would suffer. I was terrified." Sarah wanted to hate her completely. But looking at Mia now, exhausted and emotionally shattered, she saw something worse than evil. She saw someone destroyed slowly enough to cooperate. "What happened to you?" Sarah whispered. Mia wiped tears from her face with trembling hands. At some point surviving became easier than resisting. Silence filled the surveillance room. Khalid stood and walked slowly between the monitors while distorted recordings of crying women echoed around them. "You both misunderstand something important," he said calmly. "Love is the strongest weapon ever created. People betray laws, morals, even themselves for love." He looked directly at Sarah. Mia did. For the first time since arriving at the mansion, Sarah fully understood Khalid's power. Violence terrified people temporarily. Emotional dependency destroyed them permanently. He turned toward Mia again. And despite everything, he continued softly, you still tried helping her escape. Mia lowered her head. Khalid sighed almost sadly. That was disappointing. The door behind them suddenly opened. Nadira entered alongside two armed guards. Something in the atmosphere changed immediately. Even Mia sensed it. Khalid adjusted his cuffs calmly before speaking. Attempted escape requires consequences. Sarah's pulse began hammering violently. Khalid's expression remained completely emotionless now. At sunrise, he announced quietly, both of you will be executed in the courtyard. Mia broke instantly. No, please. The guards grabbed her before she could reach him. Sarah watched helplessly as Mia collapsed screaming onto the floor while Khalid simply walked toward the exit without looking back. Just before leaving the room, he paused beside the doorway. Then he spoke one final sentence without emotion. Prepare them for the ceremony. The hours before sunrise passed like a nightmare Sarah could not wake from. She and Mia were locked inside separate holding rooms beneath the mansion while guards prepared the courtyard above for the execution ceremony. Through the ventilation shafts, Sarah could hear distant movement. Chairs being arranged, vehicles arriving, terrified voices whispering prayers. Nobody intended to hide the killings anymore. Fear itself was part of the system. A female servant eventually entered carrying white clothing folded neatly in her arms. Her hands trembled as she placed the garments on the bed. I'm sorry, she whispered quietly before rushing back out. Sarah sat motionless for a long time staring at the clothes. She thought about London. Rain against apartment windows. Coffee shops after university classes. Laughing with Mia before everything became poisoned by lies and fear. Now none of it felt real anymore. When guards finally escorted her upstairs, dawn painted the desert sky pale orange. The courtyard had been transformed into a stage. Wealthy guests stood silently near the balconies while frightened women from the mansion lined the walls under armed supervision. Everyone had been forced to watch. Mia was already kneeling near the fountain when Sarah arrived. Her face looked hollow from crying. The moment their eyes met, Mia whispered shakily, I'm sorry. Sarah wanted to answer, but terror had hollowed her out emotionally. She could barely feel anything now beyond exhaustion and numb disbelief. Sheikh Khalid stood near the center of the courtyard dressed in black, perfectly calm beneath the rising sunlight. Beside him, Nadira read accusations aloud like a formal legal ceremony. Attempted escape, she announced coldly. Conspiracy against the residents. Betrayal. Guards forced Sarah onto her knees beside Mia. A rifle clicked somewhere behind them. Sarah closed her eyes. Then the explosion hit. The outer gates erupted in flames so violently the shockwave shattered nearby windows across the mansion. Screams instantly consumed the courtyard as smoke poured into the sky. Another explosion followed seconds later. Gunfire erupted everywhere. Guards began shouting over one another while guests scattered in panic across the estate. Sirens echoed outside the walls as armored vehicles smashed through the burning front entrance. It's a raid, someone screamed. Chaos swallowed everything instantly. Sarah opened her eyes just as Nadira pulled a handgun from beneath her dress and fired into the crowd of captive women. Two collapsed immediately. Guards began dragging bodies while others rushed toward the surveillance rooms inside the mansion. Destroy the evidence. Kill the witnesses. Mia grabbed Sarah's arm violently. Move. They sprinted through the chaos together while bullets shattered marble columns around them. Smoke flooded the hallways as armed men exchanged gunfire with black-clad tactical teams storming the estate. How did they find us? Sarah shouted. Elena, Mia gasped while pulling her through the corridors. During the tunnel escape, she triggered a hidden distress signal from one of the dead guards. The mansion had become a war zone. Servants ran screaming through smoke-filled hallways while security teams dragged hard drives, documents, and cash toward underground exits. Fire alarms screamed endlessly overhead. As they pushed deeper inside the burning mansion, Mia suddenly stopped beside the surveillance room door. I need to tell you everything. Sarah stared at her in disbelief. Now. Tears streamed down Mia's face. I recruited women for them, she confessed shakily. At first only online conversations. Then travel arrangements. Sometimes I convinced girls to trust fake clients because Khalid said nobody would get hurt. Sarah felt sick listening to her. But people disappeared anyway, Mia whispered. And every time I tried leaving, they threatened me again. Gunfire exploded somewhere nearby. Mia grabbed Sarah desperately. You have to believe me. I never wanted you dead. Before Sarah could respond, several guards appeared at the far end of the corridor, firing wildly toward them. Run! Mia screamed. They fled through smoke and debris while flames spread rapidly across the mansion walls. Parts of the ceiling had already begun collapsing. Somewhere outside, helicopters thundered overhead. Near the West Wing staircase, Mia suddenly shoved Sarah behind a fallen marble pillar just as bullets tore through the hallway. Then everything happened too fast. More gunfire erupted. People screamed. Sarah looked up just in time to see Mia running back toward the smoke-filled corridor behind them. Mia, she screamed. But her friend disappeared completely into the burning chaos as armed officers stormed past Sarah toward the deeper sections of the mansion. The last thing she saw was Mia's silhouette vanishing through smoke while gunfire echoed endlessly around the collapsing estate. By the time Sarah returned to London, the world already knew about the mansion. News channels replayed helicopter footage of the burning estate for weeks. Headlines described international trafficking networks, fake romance scams, and secret recordings used to blackmail wealthy clients across multiple countries. Investigators uncovered hundreds of missing person cases connected to Sheikh Khalid's organization. Yet Khalid himself had vanished. Authorities released blurred security photos, intercepted financial records, and witness testimonies, but none of it mattered. He disappeared before the raid fully secured the property, leaving governments publicly humiliated. People online called him the Desert Sheikh. Others called him a ghost. Sarah stopped watching the coverage after the second week. Every report triggered memories she could barely survive already. Gunfire echoing through hallways. Concrete graves beneath the pool. Women crying behind locked doors. Mia disappearing into smoke. Some nights Sarah woke screaming. Other nights she slept beside the lights because darkness reminded her too much of underground tunnels and surveillance rooms. Her tiny London apartment no longer felt comforting. The silence itself felt dangerous now. Therapists asked careful questions while investigators demanded detailed statements about the mansion. Everyone wanted explanations. How did intelligent women become trapped so completely? Sarah struggled answering that herself. Because the truth sounded impossible. Nobody inside the mansion had been controlled by chains alone. Khalid studied emotional weakness like a scientist. Loneliness. Debt. Shame. Fear. He offered affection exactly where people were broken most deeply, then slowly transformed dependency into obedience. The victims had not simply been kidnapped. Many had been psychologically rebuilt. And some eventually became part of the machine hurting others. That realization haunted Sarah most of all. 3 weeks after the raid, authorities officially declared Mia presumed dead. A body matching her physical description had reportedly been recovered from the West Wing after the fire. DNA confirmation remained incomplete because of severe damage, but investigators believed there was little doubt. Sarah said nothing during the briefing. Part of her refused to believe Mia was dead. Another part feared she was alive. Late one rainy evening, Sarah returned home after another exhausting interview with detectives. Her apartment felt colder than usual. Bills remained piled beside the sink exactly where she left them weeks earlier, remnants of the ordinary life that no longer existed. As she plugged her phone into the charger, the screen suddenly flickered. Unknown encrypted file received. Sarah froze. The message contained no text, only a photograph. Her hands immediately began shaking as the image loaded slowly onto the screen. Mia stood beside Sheikh Khalid aboard a luxury yacht somewhere beneath bright Mediterranean sunlight. Her hair blew softly in the wind while Khalid rested one hand against the railing beside her. Neither looked frightened. Neither looked imprisoned. Mia stared directly into the camera, wearing an unreadable expression somewhere between sadness and warning. Sarah's breathing became uneven. Below the photograph appeared a single encrypted sentence. "You still don't understand who saved who." Sarah dropped onto the edge of her bed, staring at the screen in horror. Outside, rain struck the apartment windows exactly like the night Mia first contacted her months earlier. Suddenly, every memory felt unstable again. Had Mia betrayed Khalid during the raid? Or had she protected him? Had she saved Sarah out of guilt? Or because Khalid allowed it? Sarah enlarged the photograph desperately, searching for clues inside Mia's expression. Then she noticed something hidden in the background near the yacht's upper deck. A man holding a rifle. Watching Mia carefully, Sarah's stomach twisted violently. Before she could process the image further, the encrypted message suddenly disappeared from her phone completely. The screen went black for several seconds before rebooting itself automatically. The file was gone. No trace remained. Only Mia's final sentence echoed inside Sarah's mind while rain continued falling across London. "You still don't understand who saved who." The message vanished from Sarah's phone, but the damage remained permanently inside her mind. For days she barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Mia standing beside Sheikh Khalid on the yacht, trapped beneath the watch of armed guards. Investigators dismissed the possibility immediately when Sarah reported the image. "It's probably fabricated," one detective insisted. "These organizations manipulate survivors psychologically." But Sarah no longer trusted official explanations. Too many details from the mansion had been buried quietly after the raid. Wealthy names connected to the estate disappeared from public reports almost overnight. Certain witnesses stopped cooperating. Evidence vanished from leaked case files online within hours of appearing. Someone powerful was protecting the organization. Obsessed with finding answers, Sarah began investigating alone. She spent nights inside internet forums dedicated to missing person cases and international romance scams. Gradually, patterns emerged. Fake charities recruiting vulnerable women for overseas opportunities. Luxury dating apps connected to shell corporations. Influencers mysteriously gaining wealth after visiting private events hosted by elite businessmen. The deeper Sarah searched, the larger the nightmare became. Khalid's mansion had never been the center of the operation. It was only one branch. She eventually discovered encrypted financial records leaked anonymously onto a journalist forum. Millions of dollars flowed through fake humanitarian foundations registered across Europe and the Gulf region. Politicians attended private galas connected to the same companies funding Khalid's recruitment network. Even law enforcement names appeared repeatedly. Corrupt officials, border agents, diplomats. Sarah realized the organization survived because too many important people benefited from it. Then the calls began. At first, they arrived late at night from blocked numbers. Nobody spoke after she answered. Only silence filled the line before the calls disconnected. Then the recordings started. One afternoon, Sarah answered her phone and froze instantly after hearing distant screaming through the speaker. Not random screaming. Women crying inside the mansion. She recognized the sound of the surveillance room alarms in the background. Another call played the exact gunshot from the courtyard execution. Someone wanted her afraid again. From that moment onward, Sarah began noticing things everywhere. A black sedan parked repeatedly outside her apartment building. The same man reading newspapers inside cafes near her university. Footsteps behind her at underground stations that stopped whenever she turned around. Whether the danger was real or psychological no longer mattered. Fear had returned completely. One rainy evening, Sarah arrived home and found her apartment door slightly open. Her blood ran cold. She stepped inside cautiously. Nothing appeared stolen. But her laptop sat open on the kitchen table, displaying a single photograph from the mansion's surveillance archives. Sarah sleeping inside her bedroom during captivity. Beneath the image, someone had typed 3 words. "We never left." Sarah nearly vomited. That same night, her phone buzzed with an incoming encrypted video request from an unknown server. The screen flickered several times before a shaky image finally appeared. Mia. Sarah stopped breathing. Mia looked drastically thinner now. Dark circles hollowed her eyes, and bruises marked one side of her neck. She sat inside a dimly lit room that looked like a hotel suite, constantly glancing fearfully toward the doorway behind her. "Mia, where are you?" I don't have much time, Mia whispered urgently. Her voice shook uncontrollably. They rebuilt everything after the raid. New identities. New investors. They're already recruiting again. Sarah felt panic rising inside her chest. Tell me where you are. I'll contact authorities. No. Mia snapped suddenly. You can't trust them. She explained that several officials involved in the original investigation secretly worked with Khalid's network. Survivors who attempted public testimony had either disappeared, overdosed mysteriously, or withdrawn statements under pressure. Khalid knew about the raid before it happened, Mia whispered. Someone inside the task force warned him. Sarah's hands trembled around the phone. Then help me expose him. Mia looked exhausted beyond words. You still don't understand. There is no exposing people this powerful. For several seconds, neither woman spoke. Then Mia leaned closer toward the camera. He's rebuilding somewhere in. Suddenly loud banging erupted behind her. Mia's face drained of color. No, no. Voices shouted outside the room. The hotel door burst inward violently as masked men stormed inside carrying rifles. Mia screamed and grabbed the phone while furniture crashed behind her. Sarah, run. The screen spun wildly before falling sideways onto the floor. Sarah listened helplessly as men shouted in another language while Mia screamed somewhere off camera. Then came a loud crash. Silence. The video feed abruptly cut to black. Days later, a plain black envelope arrived outside Sarah's apartment with no postage or return address. Inside was a luxury flight ticket. One way. Destination. Unknown. Attached beneath it was a passport carrying a different female name but Sarah's photograph. And at the bottom of the envelope, typed neatly in black ink, were 6 final words. This time, come alone.